Hi, this is Rich Uzdowski, and I'm here today with the Center for Middletown Studies High School Consolidation Oral History Project. Today is June 23rd, 2015, and I'm going to be talking to Julie Maugherman. She was kind enough to sit down and talk with us today and give us some of her perspectives on the consolidation and the school situation here in Muncie. So if you wouldn't mind starting off by just giving us your address. You can give your work address, where you work, your age, and what you do.
Okay. I am the Director of Guidance and Counseling at Burris Laboratory School here on Ball State's campus. I have been there for 17 years. I'm 44. The address is Burris Laboratory School.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay. And we're just going to jump right in here with kind of the big overarching question. And that is, what are your thoughts and opinions on the high school consolidation here in town?
They had been, and I say they because I mean, while I'm a Muncie community member, especially working at another school, I feel like Muncie Community Schools is they. And they've been talking about it for a while. I know that Muncie Community Schools had financial concerns for several years. I mean, all schools do, but theirs were pretty significant, lots and lots of money, and I know that they had been thinking about consolidating more than one time, and they ended up not doing it when it came up. I think they had to do it. I'm positive there were, lots of difficulties, and but there also were benefits to the students, and I guess I want to think about it from the students' point of view.
Yeah.
And I think that any change takes a lot of getting used to, and this is a big change, especially for the students coming from Southside, especially. Sure. But I feel like it was something that had to be done and was going to be done, so why not do it with a positive attitude, which I think they did very well.
Okay. So when you say it had to be done, and you said they were kind of in financial trouble, would you say it was a financial imperative then?
Yeah.
That they consolidated?
Yeah, I'm sure I don't think they would have consolidated if they didn't have to financially.
Okay. Now, kind of from a school guidance counselor perspective, how do you see a transition like this? How should it pan out? How is it panning out? What's the best case scenario?
Best case scenario is a lot of transition time for the students and the teachers, I guess. I guess I figure we're adults, teachers, counselors, administrators, so we roll with change, are expected to roll with change, maybe with less complaints and vocal criticism than the students and their parents. But I think that knowing this change was going to happen, I don't remember how far in advance they knew, but the kids had time to say goodbye to their school. The Southside kids and Central kids too had time to enjoy the school the way they had always thought of it, as opposed to like it happening over the summer. And hey, guess what? And sometimes changes happen that fast. And so I feel like they did a good job there. Something else that they did that I didn't realize until I was reading newspaper articles this spring is they moved a lot of the teachers from Southside to Central and ended up with too many teachers. I guess I hadn't thought about that, having too many teachers. But I think that it was good for the students to have the teachers with whom they were familiar, even if they didn't get them for class, because I'm sure they got new teachers. I think it's nice for the kids to know that those people they know and trust are in the building and are there to support them. So I think that was done very well too. I'm trying to think of the graduation, allowing the kids to wear whichever gown they wanted to wear. I think that was a neat idea. I know they just did it for this year, but I think that was good. And I read somewhere that a girl from Central wore a Southside tassel and her friend from Southside wore a Central tassel, just to show that they were changed. They wore the colors of the schools that they identified with, but I think that was cool too. So.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna pull from your Burris position here again. I'm just wondering, was there any? I don't know if I want to say position that people at Burris took, or maybe that you took. I know you're saying you kind of look. You say they when you say Muncie Community Schools, but looking maybe from an inside position, but as an outsider, how did you guys relate to the consolidation, if at all?
I'm not sure that we really did. I didn't. Other than we at Burris expected to receive students transferring because they either weren't happy with, they were Southside going to Central having new people in, or Wilson Middle School changing to Southside Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
We did get a few new students that way who had vocalized, it's going to change, we might as well change to this. They had anticipated it being a negative thing, I guess. But we did not get as many new students as I thought we would. Monroe Central got a lot.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
They got a lot. I know they were accused of stealing the football team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think that is, though? Because, I mean, Burris, you would think, would be a closer location for most people than any of the community schools, yet there was kind of a flood outward to community schools.
I think that those community schools have things we can't offer. I mean, especially athletics. We're tiny.
Good point.
We don't have a football team. We don't have a pool. When we do have teams, and we do have quite a few athletics, we're not that great. I mean, we don't have a huge amount of athletic talent to choose from. We do have talented kids, but we aren't big. So I think that we're not attractive to students who are athletes, especially those sports that we don't have: wrestling, football, swimming.
Sure. Do you feel, or did you try to make your voice heard in the decision-making process?
No.
Okay. Now, do you feel like you speak with a certain neighborhood or side of town? We're going to get into town identity now.
Okay. Well, I live just west of Tillotson, Westwood.
Mm-hmm.
So we would be the north side of town. And I'm conscious of the fact that if my son had gone to another school besides Burris, it would have been Central and north side, and I'm okay with, but we didn't actually ever have him go to Muncie Community Schools. So, no, I other than being aware of which schools we would go to if we did, I don't really have any allegiance to any of the schools.
Okay. Keeping up with just the identities in the different parts of town, I'm sure you're aware that there has been some sort of north side, south side divisions in Muncie going back a long time. And several speakers at the town hall meetings leading up to consolidation expressed concern about the way the two sides of town would interact. Should there be consolidation, especially if that consolidation would land all the kids at Central. There was some concern there. Where do you think that concern came from?
Well, I think there's always been a Central-Southside rivalry athletically, or, just competition between the schools, the bands and whatnot. But bigger than that, I think that in Muncie, there does seem to be a feeling that the better commercial properties, or the more used, that's not the right word, but people come, the good restaurants are up on the north side, the good stores. Whenever a new store or a new business is added in the paper and we're announcing that, McAllister's Deli is coming or whatever, there is usually some sort of comment like, we could have used that down on the south side. When are you going to start developing the south side? And I know that there has been some development, but I think that there is a sense that more attention, more money goes to the north side than the south side. Okay.
And you think that's probably how the people on the south side of town feel, as if stuff's funneled?
Yeah. There's a stereotype that the south side is less affluent than the north side.
Yeah, definitely.
But when you look at, and I guess it probably, the parts of town that you drive through to get to something you need, do appear to be more poor. But there's also really great housing on the south side too. And I mean, the far south side. I hadn't ever been on Burlington Street or Burlington Road, and I went for one of my students' graduation parties. And what cool old houses. And I mean,
Yeah.
it was a really neat place. I'd never been down there before. So even I'm guilty of like assuming that Muncie looks like the areas that I've been to. When I go to Marion Hunt Library from my house, I see, a certain kind of neighborhood. And I think that's what a lot of people might think Southside is, even though it's more than that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. This is a great question for somebody like you. What role do you think a high school plays in a community's identity?
Well, I don't know that my high school plays much of a role because we don't have a physical community. We have a family of students and parents and stuff. But I think a school like Muncie Central or Southside plays a big role. I'm not sure exactly why, except that it does seem like, especially with Southside, it's a family tradition to graduate from Southside. And I know that's why I mentioned earlier, students and their parents, because there were a lot of parents who were almost more upset than the students were about this potential consolidation, because it was a family tradition that everybody graduates from Southside. They're all rebels. And I think, I'm not sure how that started, but I do think that the people who graduated from Southside High School, they identify as rebels or Central, as Bearcats. And that doesn't go away even when you go to college or when you go on to other school. Somehow that's still part of their identity. So that, because they're part of the community, it's part of the community's identity.
I want to go back to, you said there isn't that powerful of an identity with Burris. Is it? And why do you think that is?
Well, when you said like a community identity, we at Burris have, they always say Burris family. And I think that's because we have our students from kindergarten through high school many times. We have, as they get older, we get their siblings and their kindergarten age little brothers and sisters come in, and they just keep coming. So that's how we get families. And I think within our little school, we feel like we're a community, but physically there is no geographical designation of our property, because you can live anywhere and go to Burris. So I guess with Southside and the north side of Muncie, there's a definite, there's a property line.
Yeah.
And Burris doesn't have that.
Would you mind explaining, so with Muncie Central, you're right, there isn't a property line anymore since everybody goes to Central. But when there was Southside and Central, there was a dividing line of who goes where. How do students come to Burris?
Well, if they're siblings of students who are already in Burris and they're in kindergarten, they automatically come in. But initially when you come in, it's a lottery. You have to be a resident of the state of Indiana. That's it. We've had students try to drive from Marion or try to drive from Indianapolis. It doesn't last very long. That's awfully hard to do.
That's a trek, yeah.
Yeah, but we've had students do that. Most of the students live in Muncie and the surrounding communities, but it doesn't matter where you live. We don't have buses, so part of being a Burris student, your parents are promising to be responsible for getting you to and from school. We have students who take the bus, but most of our students either drive themselves or their parents drop them off and pick them up. So that's what I mean about not having a geographical thing. Our students can live in lots of different places.
And it would be tough to develop an identity, a community kind of rallying around Burris because there's so many different communities.
Spread out, right.
Yeah, okay. What do you think the effects of consolidation will be? And do you think we're seeing some of them already?
Well, I think the kids will adjust. But yeah, we've seen some effects in that. I know they ended up not having to let teachers go because of retirements and people going to work at other schools. But they were going to lose teachers. They were going to have to let people go. And because they had too many. I don't know a lot about what it's like inside the school. It sounds like, actually, most of what I know from either just like light conversations with Tom Jarvis or one of the other administrators at Central, or the newspaper. So I can't speak really knowledgeably, but I know that physically the school, they had to add extra lockers. I think they're probably going to be adjusting things now that they've had a year under their belts. So I think that the physical environment of the school might be amended, edited, I don't know, to make it flow better for the kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to kind of look at this from a historical / sociological standpoint.
Okay.
Do you think that the economic changes that Muncie has experienced in the last several decades, with the factories closing, people leaving, declining student population, do you think it's fair to say that made consolidation necessary?
Yeah, I mean, it boils down to a money issue and property taxes that fund the schools. And I mean, it happened more slowly because we haven't really closed down anything recently. I think Borg Warner was probably the last big thing to close. And I had students who were affected, whose parents worked there. But I would imagine there were, within the city of Muncie or the surrounding communities, there probably were a lot of families that were affected. And location-wise, for some of those factories, I think that it probably affected one side of town more than the other, the south side.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean, I think it was an economic decision to consolidate. I don't think it was, it would be really cool if we have more AP classes for all of these students, or our band would be even better if we, put two schools together. It wasn't that. It was a money thing.
And do you think, because I've heard other people say that too, about that there will be, like you said, AP classes, there will be more academic opportunities now that the schools are consolidated. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah. Well, not necessarily. There will be different opportunities for the schools. I think that the Muncie Central students already enjoyed the number of AP classes that they had. I'm not sure if what they're adding from Southside would have been new classes or rather another section of the same class.
Okay.
But I do believe, I'm not sure where I heard it, but I do believe Central offered more AP classes and early college classes than Southside did. And so the Southside kids who have moved to Central, I do believe that they have more opportunities. Conversely, the Central kids get to be in the band with these Southside kids who win competitions. They're wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think and maybe athletically too, putting the talent of two schools together does make it so that, unlike Burris, where anybody can play anything pretty much except volleyball, because we're small and you don't get cut from a team even if you're not that great, as long as you work really hard. I'm pretty sure at Central now they probably have too many kids to play sports sometimes. And so I would imagine that there are some kids who would have been able to play who aren't able to play now. Which
was a concern of some of the people that spoke up at the meetings. Yeah. Okay. Here's my last formal question for you. What advice would you give to children growing up in Muncie today? This is kind of your forte. Who are living in the city as it is now, in the school system as it is now?
Take advantage of all the opportunities that are afforded to you. It doesn't really help to complain and bitch and moan about, the consolidation. And that's what I think the kids did a good job after initially being upset about whatever changes were going to happen in their respective schools. I think that they've done a good job of accepting. Parents, not so much, because again, we're kind of stuck in tradition and, it's not the way it used to be. I wish it were the way it used to be. I think kids are very good at adjusting to the environment as it is. So my advice would be look around, see what opportunities are there. And especially appreciate the ones that you wouldn't have gotten if you were just your single high school, not consolidated, and take advantage as much as you can. And then go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Don't stop at high school. Go to college. Learn for the rest of your life, because education's really important.
All right, I like that. So that was my last formal question.
Okay.
But I do want to end it by giving you the chance to add anything to what we've already discussed, or start something completely new if we haven't touched on something that you think is important.
I can't think of anything. I really didn't have much of an opinion on the consolidation, other than I figured it, like I said, it would affect us at Burris, in that students may try to transfer out of whatever school they were at, because they didn't want the change. And I'm trying to think of the kids who transferred. There were a couple of them who actually, and this is not unusual for any year, but their parents initiated the transfer, not the kids. It wasn't, I mean, a lot of times one of the first things I ask when I meet a new student is, be honest, it's okay. Do you want to be here, or are you here because your parents want you to be here? And I can kind of tell already by the way they interact with me whether or not they want to be here. And there are times, there's at least one or two kids every year who's like, I do not want to move. My parents are making me move. They think this is better for me.
As in, the kids would have, say it was a kid from Central, post consolidation, they wanted to go and move and transition to Central. But it was their parents that suggested they go to Burris.
Yeah. A lot of times, it's probably a mix of both. The kids want to try something new. They are excited about a change, but they're also scared, because change is hard. I mean, it's hard to transfer to Burris, even if you're happy about coming, because it's kind of a different environment than a lot of schools. So, I don't know. I think that some of the transfers from Muncie Community Schools were initiated by parents, not by kids. I think the kids are very resilient and can adjust.
Now, I just had another question pop into my mind that I've just within conversation I've been able to ask other people that I've interviewed too, and it gets at this tendency for a lot of people to look at Muncie Community Schools as not that great of a school system, and then vis-a-vis their reputation, there's this idea that, hey, it's not as bad as its reputation kind of leads people to think it is. So there's been different people who have commented on this, reputation versus reality. Do you have any take on that?
It's actually a really good school system. Some schools are stronger than others within Muncie Community Schools. And I think it has to do, school success kind of boils down to school resources, but also home support, parental supervision, just being, a value of education being instilled in the student. And so I think all schools have students who have those things, and all schools have students who don't have those things. And I think that, I guess it would be fair, I hadn't really ever thought about it, but Muncie Community Schools is stronger than sometimes people think. And so I guess I hadn't thought about it as a reputation, but I've never ever thought that Central or Southside were weak schools, or schools that students can't, get what they need from. That's never occurred to me. Maybe it's because I'm an educator and I can see all the hard work they do and the things they offer.
Different perspective.
Yeah. But I get it. I mean, I do understand. I'm trying to be objective about it. Yeah, there's a reputation of they're not as good as Delta or Yorktown or Burris or whatever. And that's just not true. I mean, we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses.
Okay. Do you mind if we ended on that?
Yep.
Well, thank you.
Yep.